I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up, then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome everyone back to the Do Hard Things podcast with your co-host, me, Gabe Lullo, and
Lexi Graham.
Awesome. So listen, we have a great one today. We're super pumped to be introducing you to our guest. This is really somebody who I have a lot of personal respect for. I was on his podcast about 2 years ago. He is really an icon in the industry, and he completely embodies what Do Hard Things is all about. John Barrows, the legend, has spent over 25 years in sales, starting from pounding the phones himself with doing 400 cold calls a week to becoming a vice president of sales at a self-funded startup and then sold to Staples. And now he's one of the most respected sales trainers in the world. He's worked with teams at Salesforce, LinkedIn, Google, Amazon, and some of the fastest growing startups out there. He's delivering his signature programs like Filling the Funnel and Driving to Close to thousands of reps. But what sets John apart isn't just his track record, it's his mission. He's committed to elevating the profession of sales, helping people sell better without losing their soul, and building a future where sales is something kids actually aspire to do. He's a trainer, he's a thought leader, he's a dad, and an author. And I'm super fired up to dig into his story today. All right, John, thank you so much, man, for joining with our podcast, Do Hard Things. Welcome back, everybody. John, you are the man, the myth, the legend. I always say that about you because it's true. But you really are the epitome of doing hard things. I mean, you're the go-to when it comes to sales. Trainers, leaders, go-to-market experts. Everyone comes to you for your podcast and really understand what's happening right now in this industry. But it started somewhere, right? So, like, how did you go from, cold calling 400 dials a week to becoming, such a massive influence in our industry?
Not only do hard things, but do it the hard way, I think, too. I've always kind of joked, I have absolutely not taken the easy route in any way, shape, or form. But, for me, I don't know, in a sick, twisted way, I like it because it kind of feels like you earn it a little bit more. Although it would be nice to get kind of just dumb lucky every once in a while. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I never had a plan to be here. Like I'm more of an evolutionist where I just kind of keep moving forward. And I think if there's one thing that I was blessed with, it's I have a very opportunistic lens in the sense that when I see something, usually with only about 2 or 3 data points, I can make a pretty quick assessment on whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. And I don't overthink it, right? I am not a details guy in any way, shape, or form. I don't overanalyze anything. I'm about the least micromanager you'll ever come across. So for me, I'm constantly just trying to push forward and try to move. And so I ebb and flow and, I've been agile enough, I think, throughout the years to capitalize on those opportunities, going from not knowing what I wanted to do in high school into college and kind of going to school because it didn't, Maryland didn't force me to declare my major. Then going from what I went from art to engineering to bio to like you name the major and I had it. And then I kind of settled on marketing because I was like, all right, well, this is maybe a little bit of business and a little, my artistic skills, if you will, if I have any. And then got out into the real world and was like, oh, nope, don't like any of this. And I think the one thing that I always knew early on was I knew I had a pretty strong work ethic. I knew that I knew I wasn't the smartest kid out there, right? There was kids who were way smarter than me, and that's just not the way my brain worked. But I absolutely knew I could outwork people. And so that's what I've really relied on my entire life is just put my head down and just grind and grind and grind and grind and grind, which is, what more than most people are willing to do. And I think that's ultimately what's gotten to me where I am right now. At no strategy, nothing but brute force and authenticity.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I feel the same way because hard work, doing hard things. It's all about that grit. And in sales, you don't find that in a resume, right? It's like there's hints of it. There's maybe some opportunities there to see it, and like, oh, maybe this guy's got it. And then when you do the interview, you're like, oh wow, this person doesn't have it, right? So how important in this tech savvy automation, landscape with all these tools and technologies and all these trainers and all these great ways of saying things, like all of that compared to grit, like what would you rather have if you were
Oh, I'll take grit
starting
all
out?
day long. It's the one thing you can't teach it. You can't teach passion. You can't teach grit. You can't teach work ethic. I mean, you can show somebody what work ethic looks like. You can show them what grit looks like. But I mean, I think if there's one big challenge that I see that's happening literally right now, and I feel like I'm talking like my dad every time I say it, is I just think work ethic has gone out the window. People are not willing to put in the effort to get to the result because they've seen everything on social. Oh, it looks so easy and everything else. And so there's this perception you put a little bit of work in and oh, you'll go viral or whatever. And that's just not the way the world works. And so I actually, here's a quick story on that on my first startup, right? I was Thrive Networks. When we were at 5 people, 10 people, everybody was bought in. Everybody's on the same page. We're all super passionate, right? Then 20 people, 30 people. When we got to about 50 people, I was like that 51st person just doesn't seem to have the drive that we do to do this, right? So I remember Jack Welch. So I ended up actually separate story. I ended up working for Jack Welch for a little while, but early days, I went to a conference that he was speaking at, and it was just a Q&A. And it's, probably a couple thousand people in the auditorium. And I, did the Q&A. I stood up and I said, "Hey, Jack, you talk a lot about grit and passion and all this stuff." And I said, "Look, we're at 50 people right now." And I went through, 20 people were all in 30, but that 51st person just doesn't feel. And I asked the dumb question at that age of my career, which was, how do you instill your passion on somebody else? And in front of 2,000 people, he basically called me an idiot. He was like, "That's a dumb question." He's like, "Because you can't. You can't instill your passion on somebody else." He's like, "That's why hiring is the key to everything because you have to hire passion. You have to hire grit. You can't teach that to people." And so that's what I look. I can teach skill. I can teach process. I can teach technique. I can teach all of that. I cannot teach passion or grit.
Was there ever a moment early on when you thought about quitting? And if so, what made you keep going and push past that?
I mean, well, I guess it depends on what you mean by quitting. Has there been times where I've quit on certain initiatives? Yes, on certain, things, but not on my career, not on the profession, not on the bigger picture stuff, right? I don't I don't really believe I have a really, quitting just doesn't sound right to me. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
right to me in any way, shape, or form. So I probably historically not quit on things that I probably should have. Um, for instance, when we got acquired by Staples, I I'm about as far from a corporate guy as you can get. I have zero filter. I can't play politics to save my life, okay? So when I went from like Black& and Decker first job, Xerox, like something didn't fit right, and then I got startups. I was like, "Oh, thank God, like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be," right? And then all of a sudden, yay, we did it. And we're the fastest growing company in Massachusetts. And then all of a sudden, Staples buys us. And to me, originally, that was like this really interesting new challenge for me. It's like, oh, I'm the point person to take my little $10 million company and integrate it into a $20 billion organization. This is going to be fun, right? Holy shit, was I wrong? You know what I mean? Like, I slammed into corporate culture again, obviously, Staples, right? I mean, my joke with them is they invented red tape. So, literally. So for me, it was one of those things where I was like, I don't fit, right? I should have quit that. I should have absolutely, because I remember the day that I should have quit it. It was so frustrating for the first for the first 6 months, I was trying to be optimistic and like, I can do this and whatever it is, but Staples wasn't really holding up their end of the bargain here. After 6 months, they started blaming me for the lack of results, but it was because and look, I'm not an guy by any stretch of the imagination, but it was blatantly obvious they weren't doing anything, but I was getting all the blame. And I remember sitting in my house and I was I was watching it's a visual for you. You know the movie 300?
Spartan.
So Spartan, right? And like Leonidas, right? So I'm sitting there in my little 800 square foot apartment with my 50-inch TV at like 3 o'clock in the morning, watching 300, thinking to myself that I'm Leonidas and they're the Persians and Staples the Persians. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna succeed despite them. And as soon as that phrase came out or that mentality hit, I'm gonna succeed despite them, the company that bought us, who I am now, I should have walked right in the door, handed my resignation, and said, "Sorry, I'm not the guy for this." But I
Yeah.
fought it for another 6 months and then got fired, right, or offered another position, fired. And that was another wake up call for me. So, but yeah, no, I don't try to quit much. I probably should quit more things than I do actually.
Right. So passion, grit, tenacity, hard work.
Mhm.
You're saying, and I agree, there's a lot of people right now that don't have it like I feel like we used to. And I feel like I'm walking up the hill to school both ways every day too, and saying that an old man. But part of our job as sales leaders is to help people find it for themselves, right? So we call it the why. I've heard you say that too. I've always heard that when I was young, like, hey, you gotta have a white hot burning desire to be successful. But I think it's part of our job is to help them figure that out, or find out a way to do that. How do you do that? Like when you're working with and training a new sales team, how do you get them to really peel back the onion and not just say, yeah, I just really want a new car, or really want, a new watch, or I really want to just pay my bills. Like it's more than that, guys. And how do you let people discover that?
So it's tough, right, when I'm working with clients to help them find their why. Like that's deep work right there. Why, values, that shit is stuff that I didn't really tap into until my 40s, quite frankly, right? And I think I think it's a fool's errand to tell somebody in their 20s to find out their why. I actually think that's a stupid recommendation. Just like I think it's a terrible recommendation of people say when you tell a kid to follow your passion. Like,
Right.
follow your passion? Are you shitting me? If I followed my passion at 18 years old, I'd be a stone painter on the side of the road painting portraits of people in some stupid, beach town or something like that. That would be me following my passion at the ripe old age of 18 years old.
Right.
You don't know what you're passionate about yet. And so you have to try a bunch of things to figure out what you like, what you're good at, and what you're really passionate about. And so I think that at first it's find your passion, not follow it, right? Find it first and then follow it. So I think big picture wise, I tell reps all the time, especially if they're going through transition and looking for a new job, I go, hey, why you might not be there yet, but values, absolutely you're there. So go back and do the deep work on your core values and be very prescriptive with exactly what your core values are and do the prioritization because once you know and you are crystal clear on those values, then you can start to marry that up to companies and leadership and teams that align with those values. Because I always say if you and I align on core values, we can do some magical things. And we'll, we might argue, whatever, but we'll ultimately come to a place of agreement. Whereas if you and I are not aligned on core values, we're just going to argue with each other. So that's why like so many reps are like, oh, I need a job. I need a job. So I'll just interview with anybody and I'll get a job with anybody. That is probably the worst thing that you could do for your career. As bad as it sounds, because you need a job and you need money. If you take a job because it just because it pays the bills and it doesn't align where you're not going to be successful at it, especially in sales. And so to your question of like, how do you get somebody tapped into their passion and their why? It's they got to believe, like, I think the number one thing that you need to be successful in sales, period, is a belief in what you do. If you do not believe that what you're selling makes a real difference for the right client, not for everybody, but for the right client, if you don't believe that, then get out. Go find something else to do because you're just one of those douchebag sales reps that's out there just trying to get a commission check and stuffing down shit from down people's throats. And I want nothing to do with you. Okay.
Right.
You're the one who gives us a bad reputation. But if you believe in what you do, like if you genuinely believe, and the easy way to do this to your question is go talk to some existing customers and ask them, hey, what's the difference we really make for you? What were you doing before us and what were you doing now, right? Talk to the leadership of your company. Like literally, if you're an SDR or a BDR or a junior sales rep, I'm going to give you some advice that'll put you on the top of the heap guaranteed. I don't care how big your company is either. Send your CEO an email and say, hey, I'm brand new here. I'm trying to understand and learn about how I can represent this business at the highest level. Would you mind giving me 15 minutes over lunch that I can just ask you about why you started this company, why you joined this company, what passion, that type of thing? Because once you understand from your existing customers, ooh, man, for the right clients, we make a real difference. And then you go interview a couple of people internally and you're like, hey, wow, these people are super passionate about that. You can start to tap into the passion for you. Right? Because it's like, when I was selling copiers, I didn't give a shit about copiers. Like, copiers are boring as hell, right? But I genuinely believed that Xerox was the best copier company in the business. So I had that belief. And so when I realized that it didn't matter what I sold, it just mattered that I believed in what I sold. Then all of a sudden it was easy for me to find opportunities and people and everything else.
Yeah.
Love it.
And getting a new sales job, obviously, like you mentioned, it's so difficult. But what do you think the hardest thing about sales is today that no one prepares you for?
Oh, I mean, the amount of rejection. It's just, I mean, yeah, you have to have such a thick skin to be in this profession, and most people don't, quite frankly. I mean, think about public speaking and those type of things. Everybody freaks out about that type of stuff. Nobody's prepared for it. Nobody gets, in college, none of us get prepared for that level of rejection coming right out. So, I think that's the piece. It's like you do like it's a 1 in 100 scenario, right? Like if you're gonna make cold calls, the expectation is maybe one of those calls is going to turn into a second step, which probably won't even go to the next level, right? So I think the highs and lows, right? I got some advice early in my career that was, hey, never let the highs get too high and never let the lows get too low. If you win, take your victory lap. Absolutely. The better thing to do though when you win, because sales is about momentum, is, and I always had that list of tough clients that I was trying to get into. So anytime I'd close a deal and had that high before I went on my little victory lap, I'd rip a list. I'd call into one of them to try to transfer that enthusiasm over to them. So yeah, I think it's just the pure rejection and how it's if you just did activity, and you don't pay attention and you don't learn from that activity, it's a burnout job almost immediately, quite frankly.
Wow. Nailing it, man. This is awesome. So turning point. You obviously had a turning point in your career in your life to go
Mhm.
all in on your own business and bring what you've learned from your sales career into other people's sales careers. How did that go? Because a lot of our audience members, want to make that step. They want to make the plunge, or they have a goal in their mind, and their why is maybe they want to, build their own business one day. What does that look like? How did you actually go all in?
Yeah, again, I think on me, it wasn't a conscious thing, it was an evolution, right? So, after we sold the company to Staples and Staples fired me, I was looking for another job and I remember, and going back to that same story, I was freaking out a little bit because I was just, for 7 years, I had my head down and I was an IT sales guy, you know what I mean? We sold outsourced IT services to the SMB market, and so I didn't look at any other options. I had 0 plan B. Like, I was 1,000% in, and honestly, as much as I knew it was wrong for me, like, me get fired? Are you out of your mind? You know what I mean? Like, I started this company. I'm the bl you cut my arm, I bleed blue. Yeah, I was the one who stood up every single month and gave the rah-rah speech, like, "We can do this." You know what I mean? Like, are you gonna fi like, me? Are you shitting me? Right? So I had this, like, crisis, right? I'm like, "Oh my god, like, what do I do?" And I had this, like, "Am I an IT sales guy? Is that what I am?" I'm like, "Ew, I don't even like computers. I don't like, this is ew," right? And my wife, thankfully, is the one who really helped me out on this because she's like, "All right, well, calm down." She's like, "Let's take a look back at every job you had." And And why were you the best at every single one of those roles? And she's like, all right, well, let's look at Xerox. Why were you the best at Xerox? Or no, DeWalt was my first job, right? So she's like, why were you one of the best reps at DeWalt? And I said, well, I don't know. DeWalt power tools are kind of badass. They're easy. Yeah, easy for me to talk about. I like them, right? So she said, okay, well then Xerox. Why were you the best rep at Xerox? And I was like, I don't know. I don't give a shit about copiers, but I believe Xerox was the best, right? Then Thrive. Why were we the fastest growing company in Massachusetts for a few years in a row, right? No, it's not because I cared about technology. It was because I believed, right? And so all of a sudden it clicked. It didn't matter what I sold. It mattered that I believed in what I sold. Then I was like, and I always had that kind of itch to go off on my own and do some consulting, but I had never had the confidence in myself to do it. So the Basho, which was the training that I took, and I was such a fan of, that helped me grow the business. It was like the first training that I sat in. I was like, oh my God, finally, like something that makes sense to me. They had an opportunity to come on as a trainer. So I was like, all right, maybe I'll use this company to learn what it's like. I love their content. I know it. I'm passionate about it because I know it works. And maybe I'll kind of see what happens. Like get in this little small business, learn the ropes, maybe one day. And they just 2007 hit, and new CEO came in, tanked the company, literally fired us all on the spot one day. And I, going back to being an opportunist, I said, look, everybody else when we got fired was like zombie land. Everybody's walking around the office like, oh my God, I got to get a job now. I don't have health insurance and all. And for me, I was like, this guy just walked away from what used to be a sick company that was generating about 4 million in revenue with a client list everybody loves and a revenue stream that's already there. I'm like, so I just walked into the guy's office. I was like, hey, just out of curiosity, because I knew he didn't shut down the company. He just went all in on the tech and left the training on the side of the road to die, and that's who we fired. I was like, hey, just out of curiosity, like, what are you going to do with the training? And he was like, no joke. He looked at me. He's like, I don't know. What do you think I should do with it? And I was like, what? I was like, you haven't thought this out? And he was like, I don't know, figure something out. I was like, all right. And I was like, so what if I started a separate company and I delivered on all the training that you have signed out there? You keep the deposits, I'll keep the receivables, and after that, I'll pay you a residual for your reseller fee. And he was like, all right, make that happen. I was like, oh shit. So I remember going out in the bullpen being like, who's coming with me? Like, guys, I did the Jerry Maguire, like, brought everybody to my house, was like, we get like this guy, nobody gets to start a business with an immediate revenue stream, a client list everybody loves, and a product that everybody loves. Like, nobody gets to start that. But I did. And only 2 of the other people came with me. Arguably, I should have gone off on my own by myself because I had some of the bigger clients and revenue streams there, but I was still too chicken to do it. So I needed somebody with me, even though I had all the resources. I knew what I was doing, but I was still too chicken to be like, all right, I'm going to hang my own shingle here and go off on it.
Right.
And I was very worried about being 100% commission rep because I had never been that, right? Now with my own business, I'm 100% commission rep, man. And I'm pretty motivated, but you want to get motivated, realize that when you get up in the morning, you ain't getting paid if you don't go to work type of thing. Then you realize, oh shit, I got to get up, right? That alarm doesn't hit snooze all that often when you're 100% commission rep. So that's really where the turning point was for me. And then, we kind of mumbled through that with a business partner, and I went off on my own. And then it was like, all right, now this is mine and I can do whatever the hell I want to do with it.
Wow.
You've had a great background in all these different sales jobs, and you've said sales is the best profession when done right and the worst when done wrong. What's the difference there?
Grant Cardone. I'm being dead serious. Grant Cardone, Jordan Belfort. Call them out straight up. That is sales done douchebag wrong. Glenn Ross, Wolf of Wall Street, Boiler Room. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Those are the douchey sales reps that have no interest in what they're selling other than to get a commission check out of the poor sap that they're trying to convince. Unethical sales. Here's it is. If you are trying to convince anybody in sales, you are doing it wrong. Sales is not about convincing anybody of anything. It's about helping people solve problems or achieve goals, period. And if you look at it as any other than that, you're doing it wrong, in my opinion. So sales done right, ethical, you have a solution that actually does what it says it does. You know what I mean? Like, you're solving actual problems. There's an actual ROI to your investment in them. That's not a promised one because you're going to buy some stupid penny stock or some real estate deal or some dipshit used car. Like, that is what I'm fighting every day. And the sad part about it, though, is it's way easier to get rich being douchey. It just is. It's way easier. Grant Cardone is literally 10x me or probably 100x me, right? But I don't care because ew.
I love you, man. You're awesome. So, okay, we're talking about commission only. We're talking about, being hungry. We're talking about being passionate. But I see, a lot of people burn out. I see a lot of people talking about burnout. Is it real? Like, why is it that, how do we prevent those things from being talked about or happening and still create an opportunity for people to have like an unlimited income opportunity without, doing this 24 hours a day? Do you have an answer there? Because I have some opinions, but I'd love to hear yours.
Look, yeah, I find that burnout really only happens when you don't love what you do.
Right.
Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I've worked, and I'm not exaggerating here. You can literally ask my wife, you can ask my family, you can ask anybody around me. I've worked, give or take, on average, and I'm going to be conservative here, f- 14 hours a day, 6 days a week for 30 years of my career. I and and I'm not exaggerating.
Right.
Like that is I'm actually on the low end on that one, I think. Because what happened, like every day of my career is been I've worked most of the day, come home, have dinner, whatever it is. If I didn't have a kid, then I would go right back to work. If I have a kid, I spend the 2 hours with my daughter. Then and then when she goes and does her homework, I'm back in the office, right? Yeah, I take my vacations and those type of things. But the whole like if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I don't necessarily agree with that because work is work. You know what I mean? But I think burnout is when you don't care about what you do, when you're just hitting, when you're just showing up and doing the numbers. You know what I mean? That's when you don't have a connection to the difference that you're making, to your why, to your values, to those like burnout happens overnight,
Exactly.
right? But man, when you believe it, well, yeah, I mean, burnout's hard work. And, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, suck it up.
And do you have a network of people like close to you? Obviously, your wife and your family supports that,
Mhm.
but I find that there's maybe for me it's a big disconnect. Like no one in my family does sales like this, right? I come from a very blue collar family. The only way to make money is to lift heavy things and get dirty and smell like fish at the end of the night, right?
Mhm.
In the restaurant. So when I realized my mouth and my mind
Mhm.
could actually make money,
Mhm.
it blew my mind.
Mhm.
But then I had to really find people like you and others to listen to and understand, okay, I'm not alone here.
Mm.
And I think that really helped me when I started building that network where when people would come to me and say, you know what, aren't you afraid of burning out when you're working those types of hours and days? I'm like, I never even thought of that. I'm like burnout. I'm like, not even close. I want to work more. But and like as soon as I started hanging out with the people that were doing the same thing as me, then I realized, okay, I'm not actually weird.
Yeah.
So
No.
how do you recommend that for people in this space?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing of, you are the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, right? That's a fact.
Right.
That's absolutely true. I'm very fortunate that I found a partner, my wife, who has a very similar mindset. Like, I'd say she outworks me in a lot of ways, as far as the work she does and her passion and those type of things. So, when we were starting off and she when I went off on my own, right? Because it's tough to have two entrepreneurs under one umbrella, especially if you're looking for like mortgages and stuff like that. So like when I had the opportunity to go off on my own and start traveling around as much as I did, she stayed home, and got a quote unquote real job and allowed me to be gone, every week and traveling 2 million miles in less than 10 years and all that stuff. So it was a really she's probably my biggest support piece. But yeah, friends, you know what I mean? Like is just that you end up gravitating towards people that fit your mindset, and you unfortunately have to outgrow a lot of people that don't. I have a lot of friends to your point, most of my friends growing up are construction workers, contractors, blue collar guys, you know what I mean? Like that type of thing. And they're the ones who after, a long day, hard work, they go to the bar at 5 o'clock and they avoid their wives and they, go out golfing so that they can bitch and moan about their kids and all that other stuff. And that was just something that I'd never, you know what I mean? I grew out of that. I have a great wife. I love my job. I don't need to bitch about my kid. My daughter's awesome. You know what I mean? So me sitting around those conversations, I just got bored with them, quite frankly. I'm like, this is not intellectually stimulating. You guys are not at my level. Not that I don't like you anymore. It's just I'm gonna limit my hanging out with you because, quite frankly, you're dragging me down, or not dragging me down. You're not lifting me up. right?
Yeah.
And so you got to go, you got to go find your tribe. You got to go find people to do.
Awesome. Let's talk legacy. So, what's next for you, John? You've built a company, written a book, trained thousands. Why do you keep showing up for sales?
I'm not done yet. I think I got a little bit left to offer, probably a decent amount left to offer. And I also think that right now is a pretty critical time in this profession. If I'm going to be honest, not that I should be the Pied Piper to lead us through this shit, but I've seen enough. And I think I got my finger on the pulse of what's going on with this AI stuff. And I'm genuinely concerned with our profession, quite frankly, because I'm seeing AI do 80% of what most sales reps can do and doing it way better than most sales reps can do. And so I think we're in we all know that we're living in a legacy model right now. It's obvious, and we're transitioning to this new model. It's just nobody knows what this new model is. So, for the next few years here, I'm going to try to, figure out how to bridge the gap between the old and the new. And for the people that care and are willing to put in the work, I'll give them everything I got to get there. But, I got 3 more years in me, I think. I got my daughter's a freshman in high school. Um, I'm going to be 50 this year. And, in 3 years, she'll graduate. And we got a house down in Costa Rica. And so once she graduates, I'm probably going to sell a house here, maybe buy a condo in Boston and then do the snowbird thing, but mostly stay down in Costa Rica. And, my goal there is to create almost like a sales ecosystem where people can come down there and shoot the shit about sales and, business and whatever. So that's kind of the ultimate goal there for me. But I got about 3 more years of pushing as hard as I'm pushing right now to make whatever difference I can.
That's amazing. So you brought up AI. I had it on my to-do list to talk about. I was on your podcast, I think it was over a year and a half ago, and it was a much different conversation in a year and a half of what's happened in AI to today. Where does it stand for you? You obviously brought up the fact that it's shaking up the industry more than just shaking it up. It's altering the course of our industry. How do you feel it's shaping up now? And I do want to date this, it's 2025, right? So we don't know what the world is going to show us in another year and a half. But where do you see it currently?
Yeah. I mean, I knew a year and a half ago when it hit, I knew we were all screwed, quite frankly. Myself included. I was like, ooh, I'm irrelevant already, and I know it because this stuff is already, you know what I mean? It's already knows more than so. The EQ versus the IQ, right? I think the IQ stuff is over. I don't think it is. This thing is smarter than all of us. Period. Right. Um, but that doesn't mean it's better than us. So I think I go by something I heard from Gary Vaynerchuk when I met him a few years back. Because back in 2017, he had, a couple of reps left Salesforce.com and they say, "Hey, John, we created this artificial intelligence bot that creates super hyper personalized emails. And we actually based it off of your email and we want to show it to you." And I was like, "Yeah, right, whatever." Right. And this is back in 2017. And what they sent me was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what?" I'm like, "What? A robot wrote this?" And they were like, "Actually, yeah." And I was like, "There was no human involvement in this?" And they're like, "Nope, we just took it and pointed it at the article, and this is what it wrote." And I was like, "Oh my God." I'm like, and so I freaked out, right? And then I asked Gary, I'm like, "Gary, I just saw," because we had this little 4D session where you go to his office and whatever, and you do a Q&A with him. And I said, "Gary, I just saw a robot write an email better and faster than I ever could and more personalized than I ever could." I'm like, "Where does that leave us as humans?" And he said something that still sticks with me. He's like, "Don't worry about the tech. You're not gonna beat it." He goes, "Just be the last mile." So what? He said, "Be the last mile." He goes, "Let it do all the heavy lifting. Let it do the research. Let it write the stuff, right? But right before it goes out, make sure you humanize it, right? Because as long as there's a human on the other end, as long as there's a human buying, we have a chance. Once the AI starts to buy, we're all screwed, okay? But as long as there's a human buying, there's a level of connectivity that we have to have. And I don't know about you guys, like I get hundreds of comments on my posts and emails from AI, and no matter how personalized they are, which most of them aren't, by the way, but even if they are, there's still something missing to them. And I can't put my finger on it other than they don't have a soul. Like there's just something about it that it's either too good or it's something, or that stupid emoji that they throw in there, or something. And I'll tell you right now with AI, here's my take on it. If I understand that whatever it is, like whether it's messaging or a chatbot, or if I know that it's AI, I'm all in. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, tell me more. This is super interesting, right? But as soon as I feel duped, as soon as a human uses AI to pretend like it's human, and I sniff that it's not a human, I don't give a shit how valuable the content is or what I'm looking at. I discredit it immediately.
Right.
And so I think that AI is, and you've heard it. I've said this for about a year and a half. And most people say it now too, which is, we're not going to get replaced by AI. We're going to get replaced by sales reps who learn how to use AI. And that's the God's honest truth. Like, at least right now. I mean, maybe in a year and a half, it's going to replace all of us and we can do Terminator and Matrix and we can have that conversation if you want to. But for now, it's the ones who I think your only option right now is to dive in with both feet and start to figure this shit out, or unplug and go to Costa Rica and not even tap into the network right now, because I don't think there's a middle ground. I think those middle ground people are just going to get erased.
And with everything moving so fast, how do you stay sharp, relevant, and stay human at the same time with using AI?
Yes, I feel really fortunate, real quite frankly, that I was born when I was born and I was given the opportunity that I was given. I'm a Gen Xer. I grew up without tech. I grew up trying to have to figure shit out. I grew up without my parents being home when I was, you know what I mean? And so there's so much context for me to bring to AI that it's a superpower, quite frankly. Right? Because I think this is the fear that I have right now is that we've gone from a search engine to an answer engine. And that sounds great, like, oh, I got the answer. But the search engine, at least, if you whatever Google, when you Googled something, you can argue that it served us up whatever it felt like serving us up. So it was still just giving us the information it wanted to give us. But I mean, at least we had a perception of choice, right? It was like you could choose your source of truth and be like, let me read that one. No, that's bullshit. Let me read this one, right? Now you've put something in AI and it gives you the exact answer. And it's pulling off the internet, so it can't really be accurate all the time. But the fear is that we are such a lazy species. It's always least path of resistance. And so the vast majority of people are just going to say, hey, AI, write a perfect email for me, cut, paste, send. Hey, AI, could you write this proposal for me? Cut, paste, send. Hey, what's a perfect question I should ask during a discovery call? Ask the question, right? And in that case, or automate, my workflows and all this other stuff. And if you are looking at AI to automate, I think it's a fool's errand. You're basically automating yourself out of a job. Why do I need you if that's the case? Like, okay, great. Write the perfect prompt that's going to get the best response. Okay, thanks. Now why do I have to pay you 90 grand a year to push that button? Right. So, but if you look at it as a co-pilot, as a coach, as a curiosity filler, it is an absolute superpower. So for me, I, you'll hear me ask this on my podcast. I might even ask you, Gabe, like, are you born with curiosity or can you build it? Right. Based on a lot of conversations, I genuinely think like genuine curiosity you're actually born with. But I think you can become curious by being interested in something. So for me, my superpower is I'm super curious. I know I'm not the smartest kid out there. That's why I love my podcast, because that's how I learn. I don't learn by reading books or taking courses. I learn by getting people on who are smarter than me and just asking questions. Like, tell me more about that. I don't understand, whatever. And so if I take that frame of mind and I bring it to AI and I just say, tell me more about this. What's going on here? It's insane. Like, so how do I stay up on it? I'm curious. And I'm constantly like, what about this? And all right, try that. And I'm 1,000% okay with failing. I mean, I failed 1,000 times in my career, hard too. And so I'm like, oh, okay, fuck it. That didn't work. I'll figure it out. So I think that's the way. It's just you're constantly like trying and testing new things, and then paying attention. You know what I mean? That's why, I don't engage as much on LinkedIn as I used to, but now I kind of just scroll through LinkedIn. I'm see, okay, what are people using? What's going on? There's a couple of people on Instagram that I follow as far as, the bleeding. I mean, Gary V is a perfect example for me. I was all in on him a while ago. I've kind of fallen off, but he for a while there was my litmus test because I think Gary usually stays like 5, 6, 10 steps ahead of everybody, right? And so I pay attention to what he's saying, and I'm like, all right, how can I just stay one step ahead? Right? Because if you could just stay one step ahead of your audience, you're perceived as a thought leader. You know what I mean? People follow you, but you have to stay that one step ahead. You don't have to step 10 steps ahead. People are scared of 10 steps ahead. They're like, "Hey, what's realistic for me? How can I get to that next level?" And that's for me, I'm a conduit to the audience. So my whole philosophy is, that's why my membership is called JB Sales Learning Lab, because I'm learning out loud. I don't know what the answer is, but I've had enough experience in this industry. I got some access to some pretty cool people. And, I'm going to try some shit out loud and see if it works. And if it works, I'm going to tell you it worked. If it doesn't work, I'm going to tell you it doesn't work. So that's kind of how I just iterate and learn out loud.
I love it. And it's always funny, like, when we're watching you asking those questions with those guests, but seeing you as a guest, there's so much knowledge in between those 2 years of yours. In
More
conclusion,
experience, man, I think.
so in conclusion, really, it's training for me right now. Like, you're all the things you're saying is, finding out your why, getting better, growing through it, not quitting, being enabled and using AI versus ones who do not are going to be obviously replaced by those individuals. Training to me right now is, I think, quintessential, and I know it's what you provide, and we want to hear more how to get a hold of you and those things. But give us some understanding of what your thoughts are on trading. And before I do, here's my thought on this. We have half of our audience are SDRs that want to be AEs one day.
Yep.
All right. And the other half are our clients, partners, and go-to-market leaders who need better, AEs on their team. And this is what I'm experiencing right now in the market. I get on the AE's calendar who's trying to do a demo with me to sell me stuff for my company. And I walk in, they're not prepared. They don't know how to build rapport. They don't know how to answer questions. I'm seeing a deck that they probably had nothing to do with building. And the follow-up is horrendous. And these people are making, pretty great money for really, really good brands. I mean, these are huge brands I'm talking about. They're trying to sell me stuff.
I know.
And I've never seen it. Now, I don't know if it's because the bubble broke and all these people are, displaced and they don't know why is it so, and I have to say it, why is it so bad right now when it comes to the sales team's abilities and enablement?
because interest rates went up. I'm dead serious. Like I do a keynote, and my keynote I present, and I position 2010 to 2022 as the golden age of sales. And I straight up say it. If you got into tech sales after 2010, I'm sorry, it has not been that hard. We've been able to get away with blasting out generic template cadence emails, setting up disco calls with anybody with a pulse, asking dumbass bant questions, droning through demos, letting our SE do the majority of the work, and then offering a massive discount. Like, that's been sales for the past 10 years.
Nailed it.
So now that money's not free, there's not a grow at all cost mentality. ROI actually matters. We legitimately have an entire generation of sales professionals who don't know how to sell. Add to that the fact that I grew up without any of the tech, and I was in the bullpen in the office. So I was around sales. So even if I didn't get good sales training, I was around it and I was learning through osmosis. I could hear the VP come over to the next person. I could hear the cold call made. And I went on face-to-face sales calls, so I could actually sit in somebody's office and feel like it was awkward when I asked a dumb question, or you know what I mean? And I got all that stuff that you really can't learn behind a screen. So now we have a whole generation of kids who not only have we overprocessed over tech and overprocessed it, but they've also joined the sales world like this. And this has turned sales, the predictable revenue model screwed sales. I think it ruined sales, quite frankly. The segmentation of roles.
Yeah.
Because it was great for us to scale, but it's terrible from a client standpoint. Nobody wants to be handed off 5 times before they talk to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, right? So predictable revenue, I think, was the beginning of the end. And then COVID really screwed it, because COVID turned it into a transaction.
Yep.
No matter how complex the sale is, this is a transaction. It's 30 minutes. I'm off the phone. See you later. And I feel nothing to tell you, sorry, man, I got a hard stop at 3:00. Whereas at least when I was in your office, like, it was harder to physically kick me out of your office, and it was easier
You
to
bring
bring
donuts.
yeah, and there was and it was just, we are so starved for authenticity. We are so starved for a conversation that isn't a BANT checklist or a medic prep doc or a whatever. And that's why we have to train on the EQ side of the house now, far more on the IQ side. Business acumen, I think we need to double down on.
Right.
Literally how to dress, how to sit up straight, how to look somebody in the eye, how to shake a fucking hand. Like, I'm sorry, like we have gone so far off of what, like, just humanity and how we should be communicating in a even reasonably polite way, that, shows, yeah, I mean, there's been kids who showed up in my demos, like, I'm like, are you on your couch right now? Like, what the like, and so I don't know. I think that the SDRs that need to become, learn full cycle sales as fast as you can. Like get there as fast, because the SDR role is, I'm sorry, it's within 2 years, it's over. There's absolutely no need for an inbound SDR. Absolutely no need for it right now with agents and all that other stuff. And outbound SDRs, it's just, I'm sorry. It's going to be a marketing function. It's going to be account-based marketing. It's going to be a salaried role, if at all, and ABM with AI all over the place. Okay. We are screaming back to full cycle sales, screaming back to it. And so I think learning how to, here's my recommendation for kids out there. Forget about training. If you want to take training, take mine. It's awesome. It's going to help you out. Go out to a networking event. Put yourself into, like, literally go Google or ChatGPT. Hey, give me the top 5 business social networking events in my town and tell me what the calendar looks like. And I want to go to one, and literally just show up, not knowing a single person. Don't go with your friends. Don't go with your, buddies or whatever it is. Go up alone and walk in and just introduce yourself to people. Shake hands, kiss babies, see what happens when you give your dumbass pitch and their eyes glaze over, or they look over your shoulder because they're trying to get out of the conversation. Feel what that is, make relationships, develop rapport with people, build your own ecosystem of partners that you can bring in that are, have a similar vibe to you and what you sell to, right? Do that, right? And you'll learn a lot more that way than you will going through any course, any training, any freaking video that you'll ever watch.
I love it. How do people get a hold of you? You mentioned your course. So what do you have available, and where do people come to get leveled up and to get that training they so desperately need right now?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. It's so the best place is jbarrows.com. So the letter J, BARROWS.com. That's everything, right? So on there you'll see my individual membership for individuals. We've got a couple of different packages there, and then we have a team membership, and then we have obviously dedicated stuff that I do for some of the bigger clients that I work with. And that's where you'll find all my social channels too. So obviously you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, all that stuff. I will say, this sounds like a humble brag, but it's kind of a pain in the ass. I've hit the 30K limit on LinkedIn, so I can't accept any more requests. But you can still follow me and everything. If anybody wants actual, tips and advice, Instagram is hands down the fastest way to get in touch with me. So if you go John M as in Michael Barrows, that's my handle. Just connect with me, DM me, do a little video. Hey, John, I'm going through this. I'm challenged with that. Any advice? And I'll usually get right back to people.
Awesome. Well, Mr. Barrows, thank you so much for your time. We're going to put your links, your website, everything you just put in the links below, guys. And thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.